Good morning. This hearing of the Subcommittee on Biotechnology, Horticulture, and Research, titled Assessing the Effectiveness of the National Organic Program, will come to order. Thank you for joining us today as we examine the effectiveness of the USDA's National Organic Program. As our nation's food manufacturers, a growing number of producers, and millions of consumers know, the USDA Organic Seal is a well-recognized and sought-after symbol in the grocery store. Ensuring the integrity of this seal is critically important to not only protect consumer confidence, but also protect the premium that organic producers continue to enjoy. This industry has experienced a tremendous amount of growth over the last 2 decades, with annual sales now totaling over $50 billion. It is no longer a niche market in coastal cities, but a core component of grocery lists and food budgets in towns large and small. My constituents, as well as those in other rural districts, are seeking out organic products, and producers in the Virgin Islands are interested in organic farming to diversify their operations and increase profits. Just as the sector has undergone tremendous change, so has its farmers. Organic farmers and ranchers can now be found in rural and urban communities across the country. They vary in size and geographic location, but their mission remains the same: to produce high-quality food that meets consumer expectations through compliance with National Organic Program standards. Today, we're going to look at that program, the growth within the sector, and needs for oversight and enforcement that may exist. Like other sectors that have seen explosive growth, the organic industry's expansion has not been without challenges. As the subcommittee with jurisdiction over organics, we have a responsibility to oversee this rapidly evolving segment without stifling the innovation that makes it so unique. We also must balance the demands for organic products while protecting the integrity of the organic seal. That goal can be achieved through thorough oversight and strong enforcement of the organic standards. Leading that oversight are today's witnesses, Undersecretary Greg Eibach and Dr. Jennifer Tucker. Thank you both for being here. USDA serves an essential role in the regulation and enforcement of organic standards, so your work is vital to the sector. The power of the organic seal is in its integrity, in the trust that consumers place in it. It's our job here in Washington, both here at the USDA, to ensure we're safeguarding the integrity of the National Organic Program. Just in recent months, we've seen this integrity challenged, with reports of fraudulent organic products being imported domestically. With these reports came consumer confusion and a risk to the reputation of our domestic organic supply chains. Such incidents only highlighted the need for expanded authorities for enforcement, increased resources, more staffing, and stronger data collection. Action needed to be taken to protect the program's integrity and restore community trust. I'm proud that the 2018 Farm Bill provided NOP with new authorities to address the most pressing concerns of the organic industry. Our legislation invested in NOP, vastly expanded the program's authority for data collection, and focused on interagency collaboration to best leverage expertise across USDA and the federal government. With these new authorities and investments, NOP should now have the tools necessary to better protect the program's integrity. Excuse me, in a time when farm incomes continue to lag behind the rest of the economy, emerging domestic markets are a much-needed source of demand for what farmers and ranchers produce. The organic sector offers an opportunity for our farmers and ranchers to invest in their operations, seek a premium on their products, and meet a growing consumer demand. I look forward to hearing today's testimony on where the USDA is in terms of implementing organic programs authorized in the 2018 Farm Bill, and to a healthy dialogue about the performing of National Organic Program. I'd now like to recognize the distinguished ranking member, Dr. Dunn of Florida, for any opening remarks he may like to make.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you for holding today's hearing to review the National Organic Program. Consumer demand for agricultural goods produced under the organic seal continues to show double-digit growth, providing market incentives for U.S. farmers across the board of a large range of products. According to USDA, organic sales account for over 4% of U.S. food sales, and U.S. farms and ranches in 2016 sold $7.6 billion worth of organic commodities. However, these successes have not come without challenges. Increases in domestic production have not been able to keep up with the increase in demand, which has created import pressures. And as we know, over the last several years, we've continued to hear reports of fraudulent imports of organic products coming into the U.S., undercutting our domestic producers and creating some distrust. In the 2018 Farm Bill, tackled the problem by providing the NOP with additional authorities to secure the industry from fraud, including robust import certification and access to cross-border documentation systems administered by other federal agencies and oversight of certifying agents operating in foreign countries. I know USDA has made good progress in implementing these provisions. I look forward to hearing about that progress from Undersecretary Ibaugh today. Finally, I'd like to highlight a few other challenges that, in my view, threaten the legitimacy of the program and the organic industry as a whole. I think pushing overly prescriptive regulations and disparaging non-organic production practices and inhibiting other organic producers' ability to use innovative practices does not move the industry forward. Selling products under the organic seal comes with a responsibility, and it's my hope that the National Organic Program, in addition to other USDA marketing programs, can continue to serve as an effective value-added tool benefiting the agricultural community as a whole. And I thank you, Secretary Ibaugh, for being here today, and I look forward to hearing your testimony. And with that, Madam Chair, I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome USDA Undersecretary for Marketing and Regulatory Programs, Greg Ibach. In this role, Undersecretary Ibach has oversight over the Agricultural Market Service and the Animal Plant Health Inspection Service, APHIS. IMS includes the National Organic Program, which we'll discuss today. Thank you for being here. Undersecretary Ibach is accompanied by Dr. Jennifer Tucker, Deputy Administrator for the National Organic Program at IMS. Dr. Tucker, thank you for helping in responding to our questions today. I understand that the Secretary, you will be the one who will be given 5 minutes to make a statement. I would also, when the 1 minute is left, you have 5 minutes, the light will turn yellow as a signal for you to start wrapping up your testimony, which I'm sure you know very well. I also want to state the chair would request that other members submit opening statements for the record if they so wish, so the witnesses may begin with his testimony, ensure that there is ample time for questions. Undersecretary, please begin when you are ready.
Okay, thank you very much, Chairman Plaskett and Ranking Member Dunn, and other members of the subcommittee. I appreciate the opportunity to appear before you today. I look forward to our discussion of organic agriculture and the critical role USDA's National Organic Program plays in ensuring the integrity of the organic label. I am Greg Ibaugh, Undersecretary for USDA's Marketing and Regulatory Programs Mission Area. With me today, as has been introduced, is Dr. Jennifer Tucker, the Deputy Administrator who oversees the National Organic Program, or NOP. Today, I'd like to provide an update on both our foreign and domestic enforcement activities. I will also update you on the Department's implementation of the organic provisions of the 2018 Farm Bill. Protecting the integrity of the organic label is more important than ever as the industry continues to grow. Sales reached a record $52.5 billion in 2018, up over 6% from the previous year. This includes 1,000 new farms that were certified in the U.S. last year. This growth has been supported by USDA's development of clear and enforceable organic standards. These standards describe how farmers grow crops and raise livestock and which herbicides, pesticides, and fertilizers they may use throughout the process. Congress established the NOP as a public-private partnership so certifiers are key to enforcement. The NOP ensures each certifier has the experience, training, and tools they need to be effective. However, when compliance is not achieved, certifiers are suspended. For example, in May, NOP suspended a certifier's office in Turkey because they could not demonstrate the ability to effectively oversee organic operations in the Black Sea region. This heightened oversight and enforcement since 2016 has resulted in at least 180 operations in that region losing their organic certification. By weeding out these bad actors, USDA helps create opportunities for expanded organic production here in the U.S. Another success story involves our collaboration with APHIS. In March, APHIS notified NOP staff that a shipment of organic bell peppers to Philadelphia had been fumigated, a prohibited practice under the NOP regulations. They provided evidence used to identify the importer and prevent the peppers from being marketed as organic in the U.S. In addition to enhanced oversight of imports, we are also overseeing and protecting the domestic market. The NOP resolves just under 500 inquiries and investigations every year. 85% of those involve U.S.-based businesses. The NOP has increased its coordination with the USDA Office of Inspector General for criminal violations, and a recent investigation resulted in significant penalties for domestic fraud. This case involved $140 million in sales of grain, which was fraudulently marketed as organic. Finally, I wanted to thank you for the enhanced enforcement provisions provided in the 2018 Farm Bill, and which provide and I will provide the following highlights on our implementation progress to date. Provisions requiring import certificates and closing certification loopholes will be included in the strengthening organic enforcement rulemaking that AMS was working on prior to passage of the 2018 Farm Bill. AMS expects to publish this proposed rule this fall. In May, AMS Customs and Border Protection and APHIS formed an interagency working group for coordination, reporting, and information sharing related to organic imports and integrity. The first working group meeting was on June 27th. AMS recently entered into an interagency agreement with CBP to automate NOP's import certificate to reduce paper processing and improve traceability and accountability for organic imports. With these new Farm Bill tools and a renewed emphasis on enforcement, USDA is committed to supporting organic farmers and ranchers by developing clear standards and creating a level playing field to support farmers and businesses producing organic food. A level playing field across countries also expands opportunities to open new markets for U.S. organic businesses. Again, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. I am happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you for that. Just note that the time is not working up here. I'm sorry? Okay, how am I going to know when my colleagues are out of time? Oh, I'll have to look over there. So that means I have to stay focused. Okay. I can't wander off in my head. Great. Okay, we're going to take a second to unplug and plug back up and see if that works.
It came out perfect. Did you notice that?
Okay, we'll begin, and I'll make a point of checking the light. Okay? Thank you so much for being here, and this is, I think, a burgeoning area. People are enormously interested in this. Everyone wants to know what's happening in organics in all of our districts. I think that's part of the reason why we have the number of members that are on this subcommittee, particularly because of the organic component to it. And I'm glad to hear, one of the things I wanted you all to talk about is if you could help me understand, just a moment, you said that your testimony focused on enforcement measures used to protect against fraudulent organic imports. I think that is important to protect consumer confidence, but it underscores the idea that our domestic production cannot keep up with demand. What is NOP doing to help grow domestic production?
I think one of the most important things that we're doing to help spur domestic production is taking action against fraudulent imports. You know, domestic producers need to have a level playing field to be able to compete on, and when imports don't meet the same standards that are expected of our domestic producers, that creates that unfair playing field that they struggle with. So I think as we've seen the reduction in the number of certified operations outside the United States, we've seen growth within the United States as there's more opportunities provided to fill that.
But now, if you are suspending certification in some instances of exporters, how will domestic supply chains be impacted by that? What percentage of that is exports that would cause a change to the supply chain?
So we're seeing a good response. Most of the imports coming in were feed grains that were used in animal agriculture, organic animal agriculture. And we're seeing more producers across the country, especially in the Midwest, where some of them operate at scale, that are embracing the opportunity and the margins that they see in the organic industry.
Okay. I want to applaud the NOP's certification cost share program for assisting producers in offsetting expenses related to organic certification. In my district, in the Virgin Islands, unfortunately, we have a low number of farmers that are certified as organic growers. In addition to the efforts under the cost share program, what steps has the department taken to increase technical assistance, outreach to increase organic certifications among small or medium-sized farmers in areas that may not be as advanced in this?
So the cost-share program, as you know, in the last administration was transferred from AMS to FSA, Farm Service Agency, and producers now go into their local Farm Service Agency office to apply for those cost-share dollars. But we're also working to be able to have materials available on the website, as well as through other avenues to increase producers' awareness of how to go about qualifying for.
Is there a means for them to get physical assistance from a human being, other than a pamphlet or website to support them, helping them walk through that? What would be the component of USDA that would assist them in doing that?
So are you specifically asking about the cost share program?
No, or other ways of getting technical support? I think Ms. Tucker is showing you something.
Yeah, the certifiers is their main responsibility to do that. And so by making sure our certifiers are educated and they have access to understanding where to approach them, they provide a lot of that educational opportunity.
And how do we expand the number of certifiers that are available for people to get that assistance?
So certifiers are a third-party system, and that's is driven by market demand. And as we have more demand, we'll see more certifiers.
Okay. And my last question is, what is the status of the origin of livestock rule that was previously proposed by your agency? What can we expect your agency to issue a final rule on that one?
So we're also very interested in the origin of livestock rule. We've heard from a number of clients across the country that have their interest in that. We share the interest in completing the rulemaking process, and we're exploring the best options to get that done. We hope to have a rule drafted for interagency review yet this year.
Okay, great. I would just think, and just one last thought, is that, you know, it's driven by the individuals who become certified are driven by the third-party certifiers. And I'm wondering if there may be ways to try and incentivize them to go into areas where they haven't gone before, or in markets that may not have previously they've thought about or not as easy. It's easy for a certifier to be in a place where there are already a bunch of certified growers, or even in urban areas. But to go to more remote places to expand that, I'm wondering if there are ways that we can, as both here in the House as well as your agency, support and create incentives for them to go in places where we haven't seen them before.
We'd definitely be interested in exploring that discussion and seeing what we could do to help enhance the availability of certifiers in areas that are deficient.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Mr. Dunn, the ranking member.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me just say parenthetically, I think it would be pretty easy to incentivize people to go to the Virgin Islands for any reason. Thank you also for being here, Undersecretary Ibaugh. I mentioned in my opening statement the 2018 Farm Bill did provide the USDA with some additional authorities to assist with fraudulent imports and encourage cooperation with the Border Patrol. What are some of the new ways you're cooperating with the Border Patrol, and how did we help you with our Farm Bill?
Yes, the Farm Bill very much provided some opportunities to increase our level of cooperation, not only with the Border Patrol, but we've also focused on increasing our cooperation within USDA. APHIS, which is the other agency in marketing and regulatory program mission area, has access to a lot of data on imports coming in as they seek to ensure and protect U.S. agriculture from pests and disease. So we have paired not only APHIS with CBPs and have a working group working together, but we also have been able to invest some funds with CBP to be able to enhance their database and their electronic ability to be able to enter our organic certificates into that system.
Excellent. So happy to hear that. So many farmers are faced with growing disease and environmental pressures, and yet all too often they lack the organic crop protection tools to meet the needs that these present to them. And often breeding disease-resistant cultivars will help, but in recent years, diseases like downy mildew evolve faster than the breeders can keep up. However, there are new tools, such as gene editing, that can enable plant breeders to quickly and precisely make edits to a plant's own genome, changes that could easily happen naturally or through breeding processes but require more time. This could help with disease resistance, drought tolerance, among other benefits. Do you see certain sustainability-minded applications such as these to potentially be consistent with the organic plant program?
So as the National Organic Standards Board set the rules originally, right now GMO or transgenics are not eligible to be in the organic program. But as you've mentioned, we've seen new technology evolve that includes gene editing that accomplishes things in shorter periods of time that can be done through a natural breeding process. And I think there is the opportunity to open the discussion to consider whether it is appropriate for some of these new technologies that include gene editing to be eligible to be used to enhance organic production and to have resistant varieties, drought-resistant, disease-resistant varieties, as well as higher yielding varieties available.
I appreciate your comments on that. I think sometimes we're more afraid of science than we should be. In your testimony, you highlighted a recent investigation in which 5 individuals pled guilty to conspiring to sell grain that was fraudulently marketed as organic. What are some of the ways that the National Organic Program exercises its enforcement capabilities domestically and internationally?
So internationally, one of the things that we utilize is data and statistics to analyze whether or not the imports coming in are realistic compared to the production, acres under production, and the yields that we should anticipate for those regions to be able to produce. And when those numbers look like they are not lining up, that gives us reason to pursue the certifiers and the farmers that are supplying those supply chains. And so that's an important tool we use. Domestically, we have opportunities to, through auditing that we do, to be able to look and see whether or not we see weaknesses that we need to follow up on as we go through that. Would you like to add anything to that, Dr. Tucker?
So we use a variety of tools to enforce both domestically and internationally. Often farmers that receive any kind of cease and desist or notice of warning very quickly come into compliance. We've also increased our collaboration with the Office of Inspector General to pursue cases where they're suspected criminal activity.
Thank you very much. Our time has expired. I want to thank you both again for coming today, and thank you again for having this hearing, Madam Chair.
Thank you. At this time, I would ask Mr. Delgado of New York for his 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Undersecretary. According to the latest census of ag data, in my district, upstate New York 19, there are nearly 5,000 farms. Of those, 96% are smaller family farms, but only about 5% farm organically. As families in my district and across the country struggle during this down farm economy, what outreach is the USDA doing to small and medium-scale producers who could benefit from organic production to increase margins? And I know you spoke earlier about the ways in which enforcing fraudulent imports has helped spur domestic production, but I'm more interested in hearing about what we're doing within our borders to more target these areas and help facilitate our farmers who are struggling.
So I think that what we do to be able to ensure that consumers continue to have confidence in organic production when they go to the grocery store is important. I think that there are some rules and the procedures to be able to be certified. The 3-year conversion period are hurdles to smaller farmers as they consider whether or not to transition to organic production. Don't necessarily know that we want to change that, but I think that as they see market opportunities, they weigh the costs of conversion with the bonuses available to them or the higher prices available to them, and they make individual decisions that we don't necessarily drive or control at USDA. But I think as long as we have a strong program, we'll provide opportunities for additional producers to enter the organic production cycle.
So you mentioned weighing the cost of transitioning and the burden that might go along with that process. Actually, not long ago, was at a farm, a dairy farm in Hoosick Falls, up in my district, the Sheffer Grassland Dairy Farm. And the gentleman decided around 2014, right before the dairy market really took a hit, he had a good year that year and said he was going to transition to organic. And he walked me through, the numbers and the economics around that. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars to make that transition. So has any thought been given, particularly now, post-2014, when the economy is even more difficult, to think through how we can make it easier, transition-wise, cost-wise, for our small family, medium-sized farms to make that transition, particularly if they see that on the other side of that transition, there could be real economic benefit?
So I think that that's part of the discussion area that the National Organic Standard Board considers as to what the rules for transition are and how any easing or changing of that rule affects the integrity of the overall program and the access to the marketplace, and whether or not there's ways to make that less time requirement or easier. And at this point in time, we haven't seen a lot of support to lessen those standards that would provide a less cost involved. But we do see more and more producers entering into organics each year. 6% increase in production, 1,000 new farms. So there are opportunities for producers that do want to make the transition to do that.
Just one more follow-up. You said there's not a lot of support for lessening the standards for transitioning. Can you just unpack that a little bit for me?
So, you know, I think, Jennifer, would you like to be a little bit more specific there for me?
So I think the organic standards need to be strong, which means there are a number of very specific steps that organic farms need to go through in order to transition. And there has not been interest in lessening the strictness of those transition standards. The U.S. has the high gold standard for organic standards, and we want to uphold that.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're honored to have with us in the subcommittee the chair of the full committee, Mr. Collin Peterson. I'll recognize him this time if he has any questions or anything he'd like to state at this time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have one question or issue. I'm sorry I wasn't here earlier, but so I guess you touched on that you're trying to crack down on these issues that are coming out of Turkey and Black Sea program and so forth, and I'm glad to hear that. But can you tell me, how does your staff handle these complaints, you know, when you've got a suspected violation, and how do they ensure that the organic standards in those countries are actually being upheld? You know, these, when you have a specific situation like this.
So, you know, we're very much, part of our responsibility is to follow up on complaints or concerns that we're made aware of. And so we have auditors that go into the marketplace, whether it be a domestic or a foreign marketplace, to take a look at the certifiers, and if we need to, into some of the farms that have been certified, to be able to ensure that the rules of the National Organic Program are being followed. And so it's through that process of audit and investigation that we're able to identify avenues and specific certifiers that aren't following our rules.
Well, so for example, I mean, some of the dairies in my area are concerned that this feed coming in from Turkey is not. So do you actually go to a farm? Do you actually go to the producers and check it out, or do you just take somebody's word for it? That how does that work?
So our first avenue is through the certifiers, to make sure that we audit them to know that their procedures that they're using to certify individual farmers are in compliance with our standards. But we also, if needed, will go to individual farms to do audits to verify what the certifiers are doing. And as a result, we've seen 180 different farms that have dropped their certification in the Baltic region or in the Black Sea region. And so we've seen imports drop from that region from where they were about half of all the imports of those commodities coming in a few years ago to where they're now only about 21% of the imports coming in. So we have seen our enforcement result in a change in where commodities are coming from.
So I take it that you've got enough folks to be able to do what you need to do at this point. Do you think you're going to have enough people going forward to be, you know, as we have an increased demand for organic and an increase in the industry? Are you going to have enough people to keep on top of this to make sure that this is has integrity?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so the monies that were provided to USDA organic program through the last Farm Bill gave us a lot of opportunities to try to gain some efficiencies. The cooperative relationship we've entered into with CBP is going to allow us to move away from a paper system to an electronic system. And when we do that, we'll be able to shift resources around. And at this time, we feel like we would have sufficient resources to be able to meet the current demands as well as what we expect demand for resources and certifiers and auditors of the certifiers and farmers to be.
Well, thank you. I'm glad. I hope that that's the case. And I would just say that, you know, my area right now, other than the large-scale farms, the only folks that are actually making any money in dairy are the organic people. And one of the reasons is it's somewhat a limited market because it does cost a lot of money to get into it. But we have to be careful that we don't want to make this so easy that it oversupplies and collapses that market like we have oversupplied the overall milk market. So, I have some sympathy for people trying to get into this, but it'd be better off to try to figure out how to give them resources to comply with the regulations than it would be to try to lower the regulations, in my opinion. But anyway, thank you, Madam Chair. I yield back.
Thank you very much. Now call on Mr. Davis of Illinois, my very, very good friend, Rodney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I have not had the opportunity in this hearing room to congratulate you on ascending to the chair. It's a tremendous step up from the last guy who chaired this subcommittee.
Good things do happen in Congress.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations to you, Madam Chair, and to the ranking member, Mr. Dunn. This is a great subcommittee to be a part of, and somebody coming from the flatland of America, central Illinois, when I got here, I didn't expect to focus a lot of our efforts and my efforts on organic issues. While my district's certainly not the salad bowl of America like my colleague, Mr. Panetta's, where organics seem to outnumber the small number of organic acreage I have in my district, the demand for organic products, ironically, is going to be driven by areas of this country that don't grow any food. And more producers are going to look at organic demand and want to make that transition. My goal on this committee over the last 6.5 years has been to make sure that the organic certification label meets certain standards. Because there's one thing that my organic producers, even though there aren't too many of them in central Illinois, they want to know that when they certify as organic, they're going to be able to ensure that the competition they have is going through that same strenuous, rigorous process. Now, in the past 10 years, the organic industry and private stakeholders have advanced 20 consensus recommendations for improvements to their organic standards via the National Organic Standards Board. And these recommendations actually demonstrate some broad agreement across a diverse coalition that doesn't necessarily, as both of you know, they don't always agree with each other. The USDA has not completed rulemaking on a single consensus recommendation. Recommendations that include proposals to strengthen organic seed usage, ensure consistency in transitioning dairy livestock, and set clear standards for greenhouse production. Undersecretary Eibach, how will the USDA make proper changes to ensure that the industry-backed standards are going to be implemented and, as we've heard from my colleagues, enforced?
So that's a great question. I appreciate that question. As I previously mentioned, we are moving forward with the origin of livestock rulemaking process. We hope to be able to have a rule submitted for interagency input by the end of this year.
All right. What about the other 19?
The other 19. So I agree that not only is it important for people that are producing through certified organic production means to know that there's a level playing field, but I think it's equally important for consumers to trust that when they go to the grocery store, they're buying a product that meets our standards as well. And the National Organic Standards Board plays an important role in advising and making recommendations to USDA. We think it's an important role. We're looking forward to making some new appointments as terms expire this coming year, and we have over 60 applicants, and so we're looking forward to be able to create a more diverse and organic standards board to be able to provide us input across the board. Well, once they make a recommendation, we do take that recommendation seriously. We look at ways to address those concerns through avenues other than regulation, as well as consider whether or not regulation is appropriate.
Well, Undersecretary, I appreciate that. I appreciate more diversity within the Organic Standards Board. I appreciate the USDA moving forward, but are there any specific dates or timelines that you might be able to share with us today about the implementation of any of the other issues? I mean, you mentioned the dairy and livestock provisions, but like I said, we've got 19 more. Are we going to move forward on the rest of them to ensure that we have the certification process? Dr. Tucker, you got any other information?
You're on.
Our timers aren't working up here, which means I don't have to shut up either. So
I'm
that's
sorry.
perfect.
Oh, no, I will shut you up.
I think one of the big steps the National Organic Program has done is move very quickly on national list rules, which are very important board recommendations. I think the recent launch of the Organic Integrity Learning Center, which now has more than 1,000 users, that's a direct result of several recommendations from the board that has been implemented and is already in wide use. The strengthening organic enforcement rule that was mentioned earlier will also implement several NOSB recommendations.
Well, just as my time has expired, just know that there is broad bipartisan consensus in making sure that we protect the organic certification process and label for our farmers who have taken the risk to provide the food that's going to be in much more demand over the next decade. Thank you, and I yield nothing back because I have no time.
Thank you. This time, I would call on my colleague, Mr. Cox.
Thank you so much, Chairman, Secretary Ibach, and Dr. Tucker. I represent California's 21st Congressional District, which is ostensibly the top agricultural district and the top agricultural state. And some of the things we grow there are blueberries, and particularly organic blueberries. And I understand the National Organic Program, the NOP, released a clarification memo regarding the legal requirements related to the 3-year transition period to be applied to container systems. And there's been significant concern by organic growers in my district regarding the ambiguity of that memo. And so it's imperative that the organic container growing industry be provided the proper guidance in order to maintain its long sought-after organic certification. And so the NOP is consistently allowed for the certification of these organic systems as long as the certifier determines the system complies with the Organic Foods Production Act, the OFPA, and the USDA organic regulations. So the question is, does the NOP plan on releasing any additional material to help growers understand what is and what is not allowed? And secondly, how can growers be best informed about requirements for the site-specific conditions when creating their organic plans?
So as you know, when Congress passed the statutes that provided for the creation of the National Organic Program and the Organic Seal, the standards that we're implementing provide for a method of production and how different herbicides, pesticides, and fertilizers which ones are eligible for use in those production. It does provide the opportunity for container growing, for aquaponics growing, for hydroponics growing, for even soilless growing if they follow those standards as the rules have evolved at this point in time. And so we are happy to look at all the different types of production that and to try to help producers understand how to comply with the national organic standards. People that have concerns about whether and need clarification as to whether their production system meets those standards, we're happy to work with individually if possible or through their industry to help them understand where any compliance concerns might fall.
Okay, that sounds good. We'll follow up with you with respect to that. And the second thing on a different subject is that I've heard from a number of the California poultry growers about the challenges being being made whole after a disease outbreak. And in your role, you certainly oversee APHIS, which handles outbreaks of animal disease. And, you know, these indemnity payments, which are key incentives to encourage the reporting of possible animal diseases, outbreaks, but the payment rates are derived from conventional livestock values. And are there any efforts underway to compensate organic producers in a I would say, more equitable way?
So first of all, we in the exotic Newcastle outbreak, I think we're on our 5th week now with no new detections. So we're hoping that we've been effective in being able to stop that disease and to be able to work our way out of having to worry about indemnification as we move forward. But no, at this time we have not looked at ways to change those indemnification rules to include organic, a different valuation for animals that are produced organically. And we have the same problems when we come up against purebred livestock operations. We're hampered to be able to indemnify them at the levels that many of them feel that the value of their livestock is as well.
How much time do you have, Chair?
1 minute.
Oh, no, yeah, naturally, the cost of production is so much higher than a conventional system, and so, once again, the focus would be on a more equitable indemnity payment, and so whatever we can do to follow up to work on that would be most appreciated.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Thank you. I yield.
Thank you. Mr. Lamalfa, of another California member.
Lots of us, huh? All right. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Appreciate it. And working with my colleagues in California as well. So anyway, and welcome Secretary Ibach and Dr. Tucker today to the panel. The issue of organics obviously is huge in our home state. With Mr. Panetta has a salad bowl, as was deemed by Mr. Davis, who should know. I have the rice bowl up in my part of the state. So I'm a rice grower in my real life, and we've actually taken a shot at growing organic rice. And I will tell you, it is, as our chairman mentioned, it's tough to keep that, get and achieve that organic certification. So I certainly appreciate how that process is to go about. And we need to protect that, not protectionism, but at least protect the integrity of that. And so one of the things I'm curious about is with implementation of 2018 Farm Bill, additional funding for research was put in place, but also ask you to touch on too the import oversight. You kind of mentioned in your comments too, and how important that is with maintaining what is coming into the country and how that protects the people that are actually reaching that level. We've had a lot of difficulty with that, but please touch first on the implementing of the additional funding in the 2018 Farm Bill for organic research and strengthening that market in this country. How's that gone so far with what you've been able to do with that funding?
So we're working hard through not only rulemaking that we had in process prior to the passage of the Farm Bill to be able to incorporate some expectations that were in the Farm Bill into those rules and to be able to have some of those moving forward yet this fall. But we also have been able to invest the resources that were provided in the Farm Bill to greater cooperation between USDA and Homeland Security through Customs and Border Protection to be able to invest money in a electronic system to be able to track imports better. We're also have brought to the table APHIS, which can complement that and provide additional insight as they oversee imports coming into the country. And we also have.
Let me back up, please, on the research a little bit more. Are the effects of these new dollars being felt in any 2019 research? The crops that they're growing there, is it a little more 2020?
That will, because of the time frame with which the Farm Bill was passed, we probably don't have research projects in place this year in 19 growing season. But we do have is we've been able to enhance research into market prices and price reporting. And we have expanded the number of organic crops that we're tracking so producers can have an idea of what the value of their crops are. We're currently conducting market research on about 220 different organic products.
Okay, thank you. And you were, I'm sorry, you were in the middle also on the imports, the electronic import certificates having been implemented and the tracking system for those. How well is that working? What's the feedback you're getting from domestic producers on how that is, the fairness on that? How's that looking?
So actually, I think that this will take a very much paper-driven system and turn it into more of an electronic system. And for a lot of producers, the responsibilities of moving paper around is a challenge. It's also a challenge sometimes to interact with an electronic system as well. But I think it will actually bring more coordination between the organic program auditors, the certifiers, as well as for domestic enforcement as well as for international enforcement.
How reliable is that system so far? As you know, where timing is always important when you're pushing paper, and the electronic method should be much more helpful in marketing, which when you're talking perishables, a lot of cases is extremely important.
Yep,
What's
I'll invite Dr. Tucker to answer that question.
So we've provided funding to Customs and Border Protection to construct the import certificate. That development work will be done this fall and then into the spring. So we'll be piloting a new system in the spring, but it takes time to program that organic import certificate into the system.
Okay, all right, thank you. My time has expired. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Now for Ms. Schreier of Washington.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I would like to echo some of the comments from my colleague, Mr. Davis, about the livestock rules. And I have an article to submit for the record from Ryan Mensonidis, an organic dairy farmer from my district, discussing the importance of finalizing the USDA's origin of livestock rule.
So ordered.
Thank you.
Without objection.
So the absence of this final rule, as expressed by Mr. Davis, has allowed other interpretations and an unfair playing field for organic dairy farmers, particularly smaller farmers. In the face of this disadvantage, Washington producers face economic hardship to the degree that failure to promptly move forward on rulemaking will mean the failure of these businesses. In fact, I've been told by more than one organic dairy farmer that their family farm may not be around in 2 years if this rule isn't finalized. So I want to thank you, first of all, for expressing that this rule should be finalized then by the end of this year. Am I understanding that correctly?
It won't be finalized. We'll be having a rule for public comment moving forward, as well as for interagency comment.
And how long are those comment periods?
So since this rule was, I might have Dr. Tucker be more specific on that, but since it was moving forward, the comment periods will be less than if we were just starting the rulemaking process. But Dr. Tucker, would you be more specific?
Yeah, we are exploring the best way that this rule could be done correctly and as expeditiously as possible. There was a lot of support for the 2015 proposed rule that was published. Clearly, that is a strong starting point for the rule.
Okay, thank you very much. I wanted to just reiterate that there's a lot of concern in Washington State about that. I have another question or comment that the Washington State Department of Agriculture administers the cost share program for all organic operations in Washington State, including those certified by other agencies. And cost share removes a barrier to entry for certification. We've already been hearing how important that is and how difficult it is to get that certification, particularly for small operations, by lowering the cost of certification. While the Farm Bill authorized increased and continued funding for this program, the agency now responsible for its distribution, the FSA, the Farm Service Agency, has not issued formal authorization to allow our state and other agencies to move forward on the distribution of funds. And this delay puts our state on a very tight timeline to respond to over 1,000 applications from businesses that have applied for the program before the end of the first cycle. gains will be lost if we can't start dispersing these funds to the businesses that depend on them. Because these are critical to small and medium-sized organic growers in our state, I wondered if you could provide an update on the timing for this authorization.
So I probably am not able to provide an update to you today on this. I'll take your concerns about this back to Undersecretary Northey, and as that's his mission area, and we will work to be able to get a response back to you to your question.
Thank you. I wanted to also reiterate our chairman's comments about not relaxing our organic standards, but doing whatever we can to support especially small and medium-sized farmers to adopt healthy soil practices, organic practices, because the intent is there, but if they can't practically do it because of the cost, I consider that the job of the USDA. And I would say the same for just, I don't think that the free market should be the only thing that drives organic farmers to pursue organic farming. I think that we all have a vested interest in this for the health of ourselves, our kids, our planet. And so I would love to see more of a push than just a free hand there. And then lastly, I have no idea how much time I have left here, so I'll just keep going until I'm told to stop.
You have 1 minute left.
Great. The organic farmers in my district, and frankly, we have 300 crops in the state of Washington, lots of specialty crops, and they are hurting because of the lack of research right now. And this includes organic and non-organic farmers. We're faced with a changing climate, and I'm hearing on a regular basis about how frustrating it is to be smart and science-oriented and yet not have the support of USDA ARS researchers there to collaborate with researchers at Washington State University. And so I just wanted to light a fire here to say we really need people in Washington State, and there's no way we're unique here, that we need to be doubling down on science and not gutting science in the USDA. Do you have a comment on that?
So I appreciate those comments, and we do value science and research and being able to equip farmers with the ability to have the latest and greatest in technology as well as production practices. I will take your interest in research, and especially research that helps Washington farmers back, and share that with Deputy Undersecretary Hutchins.
Thank you.
Thank you. Your time has expired. Ms. Hertzler from Missouri, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you for being here today. I wanted to follow up on your testimony, Mr. Ibach, and about the Farm Bill. And in there, you mentioned that the Organic Agriculture Product Imports Interagency Working Group, that's a mouthful.
Yeah.
But anyway, they had a meeting on June 27th, and that they will continue to meet monthly. So I wonder if you could elaborate on that a little bit, about what do you expect to be the most important outcomes of these monthly meetings, and why are they important?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a great task force that will be able to identify lots of opportunities to work together to move forward and bring efficiencies to our system. I'd invite Dr. Tucker again to maybe expand on what she expects some of the main outcomes to be from that working group.
Great, thank you.
So working group has convened, and we are looking forward to meeting monthly. We're coordinating on a number of projects already underway, such as the import certificate project. We've also been talking about how to integrate both NOP, but also the broader AMS staff into the Commercial Targeting Center. This a risk-based program that CBP oversees, that we think that could be an important area of synergy. Organic represents an interesting case study for a lot of trade-related questions, and so we hope to help the Office of Trade in exploring their projects as they modernize Office of Trade procedures. And we talked about ways of doing that. So we're looking forward to pursuing joint risk-based approaches that will benefit both agencies.
Very good. Well, I think that'll be very important to collaborate, and glad that you're underway and working on that. The last question deals with the issue that we've highlighted, that the chairman talked about as well, as the decrease in the amount of imports for organics because of better enforcement, which I applaud. I think it's very important for the integrity of our system at things, American farms that are buying ag imports that they think they're organic, that they really are. But that shortfall, and you mentioned a 60% decrease from the Black Sea area, does cause some concerns. Some producers are struggling to meet their demands for perhaps they're raising organic livestock, organic dairy products, or whatever, if they do not have the organic grain that they have purchased in the past from other countries. So what is being done to try to address the shortfall that perhaps some of our livestock producers are facing?
So there's several things that we've seen happening in the marketplace because of the decrease in imports from the Black Sea area. One of those things is we've seen other production areas around the world that have sought to fill that opportunity that's been created. And so that, of course, though, creates challenges for us to make sure that organic standards are being upheld in other countries around the world. And South America is one of those areas that have seen the opportunity and looked for to take advantage of that opportunity. But we also, I think, have seen, especially in the Midwest, more interest in farmers of scale that are entering the organic corn and soybean production industry that have also have the ability to produce and provide a lot of feedstuffs into the organic livestock industry. And that's encouraging too, because, you know, I think a great, one of the things that organic buyers not only like, besides the fact that it's organic, they like it when it's grown in their neighborhood or locally. They like it when the feedstuffs are produced locally as well. So I think it makes for a better product.
I have a minute left. Can you just remind all of us again and kind of review what it takes to be, say, if you're going to switch and start growing organic corn or soybeans? Isn't it a 3-year process with the land or rice?
Yeah,
So-
there's a 3-year transition process where you have to produce just like you were producing during and once you're certified. And so those 3 years, you have the impact of organic production, which might include decreased yields, but you don't have the ability to take advantage of the increased prices. And so it is a transition that I think is a challenge for producers and maybe is one of the reasons why we don't see more producers entering the organic marketplace.
Great. Thank you very much. I yield back.
Thank you for those questions, and definitely for the last one to really explain and talk about what some of the impeditors and rice. And you wanted to thank her for throwing rice in there as well? Okay. And now I'd ask someone who's been a real champion of the organic space for of quite a number of years, Ms. Pengery of Maine.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the chair and ranking member for holding this hearing, and to so many of the members for turning out. I think it shows the increased interest in our members understanding that there are real opportunities in their districts for organic farmers. I come from Maine, and I'm a certified organic farmer myself, have been for many years, and we've seen organic sales in Maine really grow tremendously from 2012 to 2017. It's gone from 36 million to 60 million in our products. It's just been a huge opportunity for farmers. It is a challenging transition, but all of them find it well worth it. And as the chair said earlier, the only farmers making money in his district right now are the organic farmers because the price point is so different. So everything that the USDA can do to support that transition has been, I think, is critically important. It's been something I have suggested to the department year after year after year for the 10 years I've been here, and I think now it's even more striking, and having this crackdown on organic imports is very helpful to American farmers because it really does make sure that there's more fairness in the marketplace, and I can't emphasize enough, and I know everyone has been talking about that too, that's really critically important. So thank you for moving forward on that and recognizing the importance of that area, but I can't emphasize enough that organic research costs share all the support things, technical assistance. That's part of what's made a big difference in Maine. We're a real focus of organic agriculture, and part of that is because we have the oldest organic farming organization in the country, and they've been a real vehicle for apprenticeship programs, journey person programs, support systems, technical assistance for farmers, and it's made a lot of difference because it is expensive, but you also need assistance along the way. I need to speak to the organic livestock rule. Several other colleagues have brought it up, and I'm just going to be clear. It's completely unacceptable that you're going to suggest that we're going to have a proposed rule this year. We had a proposed rule in 2015, and Dr. Tucker said there was a lot of support for it. I discussed this with Secretary Perdue at a appropriations hearing earlier this year, and he said to me, well, there's some, opinions on either side. No, there are not a lot of opinions on either side. This is a real consensus item, and as you've heard some of my colleagues talk about, organic dairy farmers are really challenged by not having this rule and by people basically breaking what should be a rule. So I'd just like to suggest there should be a final rule this year. There shouldn't be a proposed rule. And I do not understand why you're suggesting that there would be. So, I don't know that we can resolve that today, but I would ask the chair and the ranking member of this committee to lend their support as a committee to getting a final rule out as soon as possible. I just can't even, I don't know what to say. It's unacceptable. It needs to happen. And you've put a lot of farmers at a severe disadvantage. There isn't a lot of difference of agreement. Just to be completely clear to people, this is the difference between raising a calf with non-organic standards and then being allowed to put them into your herd, where under the rule, and what organic farmers do is they raise them organically until they're milking, and they bear those costs. So they see that as cheating the dairy system and a real financial advantage to the people who don't play by what should be the rules. So it's not that complicated, and there's a lot of consensus about it. In the comments that have come in, they were virtually all in favor of the proposed rule of 2015. This is 2019. So I just don't see any gray area here. I just can't say enough about that. I want to follow up also on what Mr. Davis talked about, and that is this sort of the consensus rules that come before you. He mentioned that there are 20 of them. And just to be clear again, the organic label is a voluntary standard. So when you have farmers coming to you and saying, we want rulemaking on this system to make sure that there's integrity in the system and we can make money, why does it take so long for you to come to an agreement? Can you give me a little bit of the detail? I only have a minute left, but what happens in the department's process? The NOSB comes to you with a recommendation. Does the department act to issue guidance or rulemaking within a specific time period? Do you have any standards? And how long is your standard for something to become a final rule?
So first, maybe to address the final rule issue with the dairy program, I think we are looking to be able to move that forward as quickly as possible. I think there is some issue because it was from 2015 whether or not we do have to take a few comments to be able to move that forward and get through the process and meet the expectations legally that we have to do. And so, but we are looking to move that forward as quickly and as legally as we can. So we appreciate those comments, and I hope you appreciate the fact that I am sincere in that. As far as recommendations from the National Organic Standards Board, as I shared before, we take those recommendations seriously at USDA. We take a look at them to see whether or not there's ways that we can implement them into other rulemakings that are in process, other standards that we set, and there are a number of different ways other than just going through rulemaking to be able to implement those recommendations, and I think we do that on a number of levels.
I am out of time, but thank you very much for saying that you're going to shorten this process, and I'm going to follow up with you, and I'm anxious to hear what you legally have to comply with and how quickly you can get this final rule out the door. It's just critically important, and I hope the committee will support the importance of that.
We'll be happy to share that information with you.
Secretary, when we talked about, you was talking about the the 2015 rules and my colleague stating that the comments were almost uniformly in one way. Do you know what the percentage of breakdowns of those who were for the proposed rule and the percentage of those in comments who opposed it or had difficulty with it?
Since that dates back to 2015, I'll be happy to let Dr. Tucker try, see if she has an answer for that
Do you have an
question.
answer, or do you need to get that information to me?
The comments were supportive of the rule. Many of them had comments on minor provisions or consider that or consider this. So, but the vast majority were supportive of the rule.
Okay, and when you say consider that or consider this, were those a large number of people who were saying, can you consider that or consider this, or?
I believe it was about a little over 1,000 comments. We can get that, the specific.
I'd
details
appreciate
to you.
that. Thank you very much. And waiting very patiently, my good colleague, Mr. Thompson of Pennsylvania. Thank you.
Thanks, Madam Chair, Ranking Member, for this hearing. Secretary Ibach, Dr. Tucker, good to see you. Thanks for your leadership and your service, as always. My first question really has, I've talked with some folks in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is the second largest for organics. When you adjust it for population, California being number one, considering there's 3 to 4 times the population in California, we're actually number one per capita. It's what you eat that makes all the difference, Doug. So this is an extremely important hearing for the Keystone State and for the agriculture industry as a whole. I've heard from some of my folks from Bell and Evans and others who are involved in the poultry industry, have a great organic line, but I've heard from poultry producers that provide those birds that meat, the difficulty of getting organic soybeans as feed. Can you give me some idea what the status is? Where are we at right now in terms of on that issue?
So I don't know that I can answer the specific questions about quantities and anticipated quantities of organic soybeans. I think maybe part of this is a result of our enforcement activities in the Black Sea region that reduced our opportunities to import those. But I'd be happy to do a little bit of research.
And they shared your concerns, actually. They very much so identified, even things not necessarily from the Black Sea, but maybe somebody that comes into this country and leaves on the East Coast, goes around the West Coast, East Coast, and all of a sudden it's organic till it shows up in a labeling prospects. And so that seems to be a challenge. Hey, regarding our number one industry and our obviously, agriculture is our number one industry in Pennsylvania. Our number one commodity is dairy, and we have regarding the dairy compliance project. Can you describe some of the correctable issues that were found and what actions were taken by producers and the department? Do you expect these farms visits to continue beyond 2019?
Yes, over the past year, we've conducted a number of unannounced visits to dairies across the country. To assess both the certifier compliance and the operational compliance of these dairies. We focus closely on the pasture standard to make sure that they're adhering to those expectations within the organic standard. We were encouraged by the visits and those inspections that we made that while there is some opportunity for additional certifier training, most of the operations were, for the most part, in compliance with the expectations. So I think that shows that producers do try to adhere to the rules. We are continuing to move forward with unannounced inspections this year. And so I think that's an important tool, not only to help ensure compliance, but dispel concerns about compliance across the nation.
Well, thank you for that. Industry collaborates with stakeholders to develop recommendations to the organic standards through deliberation at the National Organic Standards Board, obviously. Having clear standards for the transition of dairy livestock is certainly both important and a pretty high hurdle to reach. Can you walk us through the department's process after the NOSB provides the National Organic Program with a recommendation?
Since this question keeps coming up, I'll have Dr. Tucker address that in detail.
Okay. Good morning. We take the board's recommendations very seriously, and I think it's important to say a large majority of recommendations provided by the board have been acted on by the USDA. And as stated earlier, it's not always through rulemaking. There are many different ways to implement different recommendations. So a recent example is on inspector training and qualifications that the board has spent significant effort on, and that has translated into the Learning Center, as well as other materials that we use to communicate with certifiers about staff qualifications and training. So I think the board's input is very valuable in advising the USDA, and we look for many different ways to implement those recommendations. Once we get a recommendation, we evaluate the best way to move forward with it, be it rulemaking or guidance or training or some other mechanism. For anything related to guidance or rulemaking, it also goes through public comment. The national list rulemaking is our most common way of implementing national board recommendations through rulemaking. And so there is public comment that happens. We strive to have national list rules published within 18 months of a board recommendation. That's much faster than previous rules.
Thank you, Chairwoman.
Thank you for that. Mr. Lawson from Florida, your 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Ranking Member Dr. Dunn. And would like to welcome Dr. Ibach and Dr. Tucker to this committee. It's a very important committee. Undersecretary, enforcement, you talk about enforcement and inspection critical for maintaining the livelihood of organic farmers, such as organic dairy farmers in my district. Can you provide an update on April 2015 proposed rule to clarify dairy animals can only be transitioned into dairy production once?
So that is the rule that Congressman Pingree was also questioning about, and that's the rule that we're looking for the opportunity to be able to move that rule forward as quickly as possible through this late summer and fall.
Okay. Now, since there's over 50 billion, as you said, Madam Chair, in domestic organic sales in 2018, I am impressed by the growth, of this, the nation organic market. This question is for both of you, Undersecretary and Dr. Tucker, and Deputy Administrator Tucker. What opportunities our program exists to assist minority farmers, ranchers, and agribusiness to establish footing in the growing organic market?
So not only do our programs to assist transition apply to and are available to all producers, but we do have an office in USDA that works to target minority farmers and provide them special assistance. And so if you have farmers that you are interested in having access to that, we'd be happy to help you connect them.
Okay, and Dr. Tucker?
Yeah, I would highlight the materials that we have where we have farmers talking to farmers about organic certification. Those are resources that are used by our partners as well as USDA directly. Farmers who are interested in transitioning to organic will learn the most by talking to other farmers. We focused on providing tools that enable that conversation.
Okay, thank you. My district is no stranger to adverse farming conditions, and I think that Dr. Dunn over there can attest to it, for the need of crop insurance. How is the National Organic Program ensuring that information about organic standards and organic practices is getting into the hands of risk management agencies, crop insurance agencies, and adjusters and farmers?
So I'll let Dr. Tucker answer that a little bit more in detail, but I'll just say that one of the focuses that Secretary Perdue has had since becoming secretary and the instruction to us as undersecretaries is to increase our coordination wherever possible, to work with each other, to communicate across our mission area lines, to be able to have an approach, a one USDA approach. And I think as a farmer myself, I always expected when I asked the USDA office a question in my county, the FSA office, I always expected to be able to get an answer from the person I was asking it rather than be told I have to go 3 doors down or call this number somewhere else. And so we're really working hard to be able to coordinate and be able to provide answers across our mission areas and to have information flow across our mission areas.
Dr. Tucker?
Yeah, I would say that data is absolutely critical for that form of cross-collaboration and decision-making. One of the actions we've been focusing on is more and better data into the Organic Integrity Database, which provides a much better picture of what's happening among organic producers that can inform decision-making across different agencies.
Okay, and with that, I yield back, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Baird of Indiana, thank you for being here, and you have 5 minutes to ask questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Ranking Member Dunn. In Indiana, we've got, in my 4th congressional district, we have over 100 certified organic operations, and these run the gamut from smaller operations like Coonrod Family Farms to Frito-Lay. So, Mr. Ibo, the question I have, does the NOP work with the stakeholders to develop standards for organic farming?
So actually, the National Organic Standards Board, as well as the statutes that Congress has passed, are both informative to USDA's National Organic Program as they establish standards and modify those standards and evaluate new tools and new production methods as to how they would fit into an organic production and certification program. So there are many ways that we work together, and definitely producer input is always a valuable part of that as well.
Thank you. And one more question for you. The organic field crop acreage in Indiana has increased by 30% between 2016 and 2018. And to help keep pace, Purdue Extension has begun hosting an organic ag series to help farmers with planting and marketing organic crops. So, Mr. Ibaugh, as a public-private partnership, does the NOP work with the extension programs such as Purdue University? And if so, to what extent does this collaboration take place?
So definitely the USDA has arms, especially within research, education, and extension, to be able to extend knowledge through extension to farmers and ranchers about USDA programs. In the Farm Bill, there was mandatory money included in that for the Organic Ag Research Initiative that we're implementing at this time that will provide even more opportunities for Deputy Undersecretary Hutchins and his mission area to be able to work through extension with farmers.
Thank you. Dr. Tucker, do you have anything you'd like to add to either one of those questions?
We are closely connected with NRCS. They have wonderful outreach programs to farmers. We stay tightly connected with what they're communicating about organic, and we communicate on staff level frequently.
Thank you. I yield back my time.
Thank you. Bringing up the rear now will be Mr. Panetta, who will, of course, tell us that his district is California is the #1 organic grower, but we always remind him that it's #2 per capita So we try and bring him back down to size. 5 minutes. It's all yours, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's nice that your reputation precedes you up here on the dais. But thank you very much, Madam Chair, for this opportunity, and obviously thank you to all the way Secretary Ibach and Dr. Tucker for being here, as well as your preparation for being here today. It is nice that people know exactly where I come from in regards.
Here we go.
In regards to the salad bowl of the world, which is the 5th in the nation for organic production with 471 certified organic operations. We do have a lot of organics, we have a lot of conventional, we have a lot of salad, we got a lot of berries, you name it.
You guys just got a
grow
lot.
it. We grow it, exactly. But obviously, these types of hearings are very important, not just to me, but obviously to my constituency, conventional and organic. And so today, obviously, we've talked about a number of things focusing on organic. And we're fortunate enough, and I was fortunate enough to be a part of this committee last term, in which we actually, on a bipartisan basis, there are a couple of bumps in the road, but eventually got a farm bill that was fairly bipartisan. And one of the important aspects of that farm bill was $5 million in mandatory funding for the Organic Production and Market Data Initiative. Obviously, you know, it facilitates the collection and distribution of organic market information, including data on production, handling, distribution, retail, consumer, and consumer purchasing patterns. My question to you, Undersecretary, is how do you plan to ensure that the funds that are utilized can best assist our organic producers who need that type of robust data on farm gate price reports and other key data to help them with the planning?
So as you're correct, and thank you very much for the investment in the organic program in USDA of the $5 million. Of that, AMS received $3.5 million. The rest of that went to ERS and NAS to be able to enhance their activities as well. This is going to allow AMS Market News to expand our organic market price reporting services. We're also boosting outreach to reporters and industry contacts to increase the products and the markets covered, as well as a number of other key contacts in the organic sector. This has allowed us to do market research and price reporting on nearly 220 organic products now. And, you know, whether you're an organic farmer or a cow-calf producer in central Nebraska, USDA AMS Market News plays an important role in helping you understand what the value of your production is worth and help you be able to make sure you're seeking a fair price for the products you produce on your farm. So it's one of the programs that is within my mission area that I'm probably the most proud of, what the tools that gives to every kind of a farmer across our nation.
Outstanding. Thank you. Now, there are some gaps, and I think we know that, especially when it comes to organic acreage and transnational acreage in both the Organic Integrity Database as well as the National Agricultural Statistics Service Organic Survey data. You know the impact that these gaps can have on the organic community and the NOP's ability to detect and deter fraud domestically and internationally. How can the NOP ensure that accurate data acreage, that accurate acreage data is collected and reported by organic certifiers?
So I think that we have definitely certifiers to be able to help us in that, and working together with them and building strong relationships to help them, encourage them to provide us accurate information is important. But there's also back channels or cross channels that we can use to verify that the data coming in looks like it's correct and accurate, and if we see discrepancies between production and what the statistics show us, we can follow up on that. The Black Sea region was a great example of that, where we looked at the acreage that was being reported as in production organically. We looked at the number of bushels that were being offered to the market organically, and we saw that the organic production was going to have to meet or exceed conventional crop production yields in that area. So we knew there was a problem to go back and check on, and that gave us indication to go to our certifiers and to go to the farms that they were certifying to identify where the problems were. As I've said in the past, that's resulted in about 180 producers giving up their certification and no longer being part of the U.S. organic standards program. It also has seen the imports from that region decrease significantly.
Great, great. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. When, you just talked about that, I know that your website says that there are 80 certifying agents that are currently part of the USDA, 48 based in the U.S., 32 are based in foreign countries. My district, the Virgin Islands, producers want to enter the market, but we need to make sure that the small-scale producers have an opportunity to play in an equal playing field. Given the differences in size and geographic locations, how do we maintain the consistency between certifiers? How do you ensure that doesn't happen? How does USDA work to ensure that certifiers are interpreting organic standards uniformly, thereby giving fair and consistent rules across the industry?
So education and enforcement are two tools that are key there. One is to be able to communicate with certifiers, make sure that there are materials out there for them to have access to make sure that they are doing the best they can to enforce, to do what we expect them to do as certifiers. It's also our job through the audit process to then follow up, and as we audit those certifiers, to make sure that they are following our rules and meeting our expectations and applying them in a consistent and fair manner as well. And so those two go together to help us ensure success.
So like in the case of the Black Sea, the producers were decertified, but was there broader activity going on with the certifiers?
We also decertified a certifier in that area. And
Okay.
there's been other places, not only in the Black Sea, but in other parts of the world that we've decertified certifiers when we found out that they didn't meet our expectations, just like we take the same actions against domestic certifiers if we don't think that they are consistently and correctly applying our standards.
Thank you. And another Californian, Mr. Carbajal, for your 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And usually Representative Panetta and I have a little bit of banter as to who on the Central Coast is better. And but today I will tell you we are united in our message from California. Undersecretary Ibach and Dr. Tucker, thank you both for your time before our committee and your leadership to support the National Organic Program. My district, located on the Central Coast of California, is home to almost 300 organic operations, ranking it as one of the top 5 districts in California and one of the top 25 districts within the United States. The organic industry has proven to be an economic driver in my district and in the United States. Organic oversight and enforcement measures that are used to protect against fraudulent organic imports are important to the Central Coast farmers and businesses who consistently meet the highest standards for organic products and for consumers, who deserve to know that all products on grocery store shelves labeled USDA organic adhere consistently to those high standards. USDA research has been vital to the growth and the development of this multi-billion-dollar organic sector. How will the relocation of NIFA and ERS to Kansas City impact the ability of these agencies to provide NOP with information and input on organic priorities?
So I think that USDA has a long history of having offices spread across the United States that communicate with each other. Within my mission area, I have hubs in Raleigh as well as in Fort Collins and major employee concentrations in towns and cities in a number of states. And we're able to work together and share information and run effective programs by being in diverse locations. So I feel like we'll be able to continue to do that as we have offices located in new places across the United States as well. I also appreciate the fact that your producers appreciate what we do to ensure compliance and equivalency around the world. And that's been another one of the areas that we've been focused on in the last couple of years, is try to not only seek organic equivalence in marketplaces like Great Britain and Europe for U.S. Organic production, but also set an expectation on Mexico to seek equivalence with us, so that those products that move across the border in Southern California are meeting the same standards that California producers are held to.
Thank you very much. In terms of this geographic location issue, do you have some metrics that you're going to be able to evaluate to ensure that effectiveness is not compromised in any way? I mean, it's good to say that geography is not going to affect how we operate and how effective we are, but unless there's some metrics to assess that, I'm not sure that that will be the case.
Well, I can assure you that the Secretary is a big fan of metrics and tracking our progress and how we evaluate our programs. So I have no doubt in my mind that he will have a way to hold us as undersecretaries accountable for the actions of our mission area.
Thank you. And again, for the record, the Central Coast is live and present today. Madam Chair, I yield back.
Thank you. I don't know if my ranking member has any closing remarks that he'd like to make.
Just to say thank you very much to the Assistant Secretary, or Undersecretary, I'm sorry, and Dr. Tucker for your time today. You've been very illuminating and cooperative. We appreciate you.
Thank you. Just some housekeeping. Let's see where it is here. Under the rules of the committee, the record of today's hearing will remain open for 10 calendar days to receive additional material and supplementary written responses from the witnesses to any of the questions posed by a member. Just some closing thoughts that I had. As you can see, there's a strong bipartisan support for protecting the integrity of the organic seal. And I'm so glad to hear about the progress that NOP has made on enforcement with new authorities. And I look forward to future updates, specifically on your rulemaking. As expressed by my colleagues here, we have great concern as to this being prolonged. Would love for the process to be sped up some so that there can be more certainty in what the rules are. Collaboration between Congress and USDA is critical to ensure consumer confidence and for farmers to be successful. And I'm appreciative of your willingness to work in finding ways to allow new entrants and those who may have had difficulty in coming into the organic space, whether that be because of the size, the distance, or even farmers that we have not. Mr. Lawson talked about African-American farmers, which at one time were such a large part of the farming community and have diminished tremendously over time. The impediments that keep people out of the organics are something that we would love to be able to work on. And just because I'm the chair and I can do this, I want to invite you. The Virgin Islands is, my district will be having a farm tour in late August. where we'll be going around to different farms in the Virgin Islands, both on St. Croix as well as St. Thomas. And we're inviting a large collaboration of people to see our farmers and then to have meals with them in the evening to really talk with them and assist them in breaking some of those impediments that they've had. And the committee is also going to be coming to the Virgin Islands in February, which is probably the time that most people want to come for our agricultural fair. So thank you again to you, Undersecretary, and of course to Dr. Tucker for the work that you're doing and your continued support of this area, and know that the members of this subcommittee really do want to work with you and provide as much support as possible. The hearing of the Subcommittee on Biotechnology, Horticulture, and Research is adjourned.